First story. My situation is so bad, but it's still hard to leave. I'm a 39-meter and my wife, 32F, has been cheating off and on for most of our 8-year marriage. It's about 2.5 years from day one, and I found out about her second affair about 2 months ago. I didn't leave after the first affair because I felt bad about being a bad husband in some ways, and we had a 2-year-old. Amazingly, the DNA test said the kid is mine. I didn't ask for enough changes from her, and the first affair totally got rug swept. I guess getting off easy made her comfortable with cheating more. And it was with a married police officer this time. The first time was with some barely employed scrub that had the drugs she wanted. Oh yeah, and she saw the first guy a few times again before finding the cop. I went through her phone a lot more this time, including all of her emails going back years, and found out she had Tinder Plus for 9 months off and on years ago. So there must have been even more than 2 affairs, but she won't admit it. She says she met the 2 guys I know about using Reddit. Fuck Arbonne's 4 badges, lol. I also found out she was cheating on her old boyfriend when we first met, while telling me she was single. What a great person I got mixed up with. We actually separated for a month this time, but I came back home a couple weeks ago. I told myself it was to get the house ready for sale and to get a real separation agreement signed. But we haven't done those things, and now she doesn't want a divorce. Like, WTF am I doing here? I guess it's just convenient to be a family and pretend everything will be okay even when it won't. I went on a couple of dates during the short separation, but they were so draining for me even though the women were perfectly fine. I just can't do it, and it feels impossible to meet someone again. My cheating wife is young and more attractive, and would probably be remarried in 6 months if we really split while I'm left with nothing. It feels like she won't get any fucking consequences. How do I just make this divorce happen? I was hoping she would be on board and off with an AP and not care, but that didn't happen. She says they are gross and doesn't want to see them anymore. And how do I even get a separation agreement signed and filed in court if she refuses to sign it? Second story. Neighbor's wife. I have neighbors that moved in about 2 years ago. They're probably in their late 40s. They have 3 kids ranging from older teenager to middle school ages. She is good looking, a MILF, but forever yelling at the kids and just generally unfriendly. The adults argue often too. One day I heard them going back and forth. I heard him say something about the guy she got, and I heard her say something about him being the best deal. I heard some other arguing, and eventually I saw him get in the car with the kids and the dog and leaving. I know they go to the park a lot, and so that's where I assume they went. It was only minutes later a pickup truck was parked in front of their place, but I didn't think anything of it. It was a half hour or so after that I was in the yard and I could hear their pool making a slight splashing sound. Not very loud, but I could hear her in an almost whisper, moan in rhythm with the pool sounds. We have my wooden fence between our properties. There is a portion when I walk beside my bushes that I have a clear view of their pool through the gaps. So of course I had to look, and I honestly was looking for another explanation of what was happening, but it was too obvious though. She was in the water with her arms on the wall, facing me, and then some younger guy was behind her thrusting her into the wall. Every push she was making a quiet sound. It started to get faster and faster, and after just a couple of minutes it became apparent she was coming, and then so did he. I'm pretty sure he didn't pull out. I watched for a few minutes more and saw her climb out of the pool totally naked. She really does look as good naked as I had imagined. She was telling him that he needed to get dressed, and she went quickly into the house. I went inside, not believing what I just saw. It wasn't more than 20 minutes after that when I saw her husband come home with the kids. It was maybe a week or so later that I heard the husband in the backyard saying to his wife that he's not that impressed with her handyman. She responded with something like if he, the husband, wasn't so cheap they could get someone better. Update: it has been a little while, but I haven't seen anything else. I will post if and when I do. I have seen the handyman at their house several more times, and when I see her husband talking to him, I have to admit that I find it hot that he doesn't know that this dude has been doing his wife. Third story. Wife confessed to cheating. She confessed some years ago, but I have never really stopped thinking about it. Probably because he's a friend of her family and is always around on weekends and special occasions. It happened before we were married in our early 20s. My wife's mother had remarried an Armenian guy and her aunt was dating one as well. Where we live there is a small tight-knit Armenian community and they do everything together. They wanted my wife to be a part of it, not among those of us on the fringes that show up for a lot of events, but aren't Armenian or a part of their church. It was my wife's aunt's wedding. I was not invited. They said they wanted to keep it small, family only. My wife was pissed, but had no choice but to go. We met up early for brunch that day and had a few drinks. She told me that she thought she would be able to get away by 8 that evening, and I could come stay at the hotel where it was being held. She told me to wait for her phone call. This was before people carried cells everywhere. When she didn't call, all the worst things ran through my head. Was she okay? I wanted to drive to the hotel, which was an hour away. The room had been rented by her aunt, so the front desk wouldn't know anything. I finally heard from her the following afternoon. I went to pick her up at the hotel. I thought we would stay and have lunch or something, but when I got there, she was standing there with a young guy, Noel. As I pulled up, he pulled her in for a hug while acknowledging me with a glance. I knew him. He was adopted by an Armenian couple as a baby. He was in his 20s by this time. My wife's aunt and mom had tried to set her up on dates with him in the past. Of course he had been invited to the wedding. My wife immediately got in and said she just wanted to leave. So we did, and she told me she had drank too much and her aunt escorted her to her room and she just passed out. Time went by and I heard things from other people. One of my friends had been told that she gave Noel a blowjob that night. I eventually got up the nerve to bring up that night again. I didn't have to say much. She wanted to tell me. She began crying and said that she only lied because she didn't want to hurt me, but had ever since been trying to find a way to confess. Here's what I gathered from my wife and others that gave me bits and pieces from that night. My wife's aunt and mom were playing matchmaker and pushing Noel on her. I know he wanted her because he openly makes flirtatious and sometimes borderline sexual comments to her. Apparently, the shots kept flowing and my wife is a lightweight. When my wife finally collapsed to a chair, her aunt asked Noel to help her to her room. My wife started to tell me what happened, but then stopped and said that she can't remember anymore. She said he walked her up and as they got in, he began to undress her and tell her it was bedtime. At first, it sounded to me like he had taken advantage of her, and I wanted to confront him. But my wife asked me not to. She admitted that she was extremely drunk, but let him fuck her. She wishes it weren't true, but she wanted to fuck him in that moment. He had stayed the whole night with her. I still wonder about all the details. It's probably better I don't know, and I don't think she ever would or even could tell me. Fourth story. My experience as a reformed cheater. I realize I will in fact get potential threats and hate for sharing this story. I expect it. I did a horrible shitty thing and I have experienced what pain I have caused to another person who I love dearly. We are still together. I had an online affair with a man across the world. My reasons. My partner is not a bad partner actually. He's amazing. He's compassionate, strong, kind, attractive, shows he cares for others, and has always had my back. I know this is the man I want to spend forever with. I know he's the one, as they do say. It took us a lot time get to this point and we are both still healing from my actions. My why. Keep in mind these are not excuses for my behavior. And I made the choice to cheat. It is the biggest regret in my life. And I am not afraid to admit to others that I have cheated once in my life. That is something that took a while for me. to get, but I will never allow myself to sink back into this path. I love who I am now and hate who I used to be, because I hated myself and lacked self-confidence. I seeked validation from others due to my lack of self-confidence and content with myself. I felt like I did not deserve to have anything good in life. I do. I was a people pleaser and had a hard time upholding my boundaries. I am not this person anymore. Now, all of these reasons are not an excuse to do what I did, and I know it was my choice to cheat. My partner had no decision or influence in my decision. And I made a horrible choice which changed the dynamic of my relationship forever. I have already made amends with my partner, and he and I are slowly growing closer together as a couple and having more open means of communication on both sides to address needs, wants, expectations in a happy, healthy way so we both feel content within our relationship. I will not delve into my past as it is irrelevant to the discussion, and I don't want to justify my behavior, as there is no justifications for cheating. It's wrong, it hurts others, it is selfish. There are a million things you can do, and the last thing you should do is to make the choice to betray and hurt the person you love the most. If you feel unwanted or undesired, communicate with your partner and work together to make compromises and love one another. My AP is a man from a whole entire different continent. I never had plans to meet up with him. I used him for validation to try and fill an empty void within myself that no one can fill except myself. I felt extremely neglected by my partner, and instead of communicating with him about my needs, I selfishly went to someone else. I tried communicating this to my partner beforehand, but I approached him in a toxic, unhealthy way multiple times, and it led us into a cycle. Prior to meeting my AP, my mother was diagnosed with dementia, and it put me into a mental spiral. I withdrew from any and all contact with the outside world, and delved into my fantasy online world to try and escape the reality of my situation. I put on a facade because I hated who I was. I met my AP when I was drunk out of my actual mind. I invited my boyfriend to join me with drinking, and he declined my invitation and went to our bedroom to go play games on his computer. I felt really rejected. I should have told him the way I felt. I should have compromised and done something we both wanted to do if I desperately wanted attention so badly. I should have not drank that much, but I lacked control and discipline. At first, it was him casually flirting with me in an open server. My first boundary was set up. I told him I was not okay with his behavior. He continued. I let him walk right over my boundary. As the night went on, I drank more and more. I vented to him about all of my feelings, and was overall a mess. I did not reciprocate, and I did not do my due diligence. And I should have seen the signs where this would lead to. I was angry and hurt by my partner because he had rejected 3-4 invitations for us to spend time together. The next day, I woke up with a hell of a hangover, and my app messaged me once again. I ignored him. 2 days later, my app messages me again. This time he told me that he felt hurt by me ignoring him. I panicked and replied back to him because I did not want to hurt his feelings. We ended up talking as friends. He referred to me as his girlfriend, and I got upset at him and told him that I wasn't, that I never would be, and never wanted to be. Boundary set up again that I let him walk over. It began to delve into an emotional affair for a week. This man and I would message each other back constantly, and I began to think he was kind of cute after he showed me his face. I should have realized I was being tempted. I did not. It escalated very quickly, and my AP and I began sexting one another. Nudes were exchanged on both sides. I will admit, it felt good in the moment. It felt good feeling desired looking back at the messages. It fills me with disgust and anger towards the way I was acting. Eventually the guilt began to catch up to me. I told my AP that I never wanted to talk to him again and blocked him. We had talked for about a week at that point. I admitted to my boyfriend what I had been doing. He told me he already knew, that he had snooped through my phone, that he was waiting for me to admit to him what I did. Obviously my partner was very hurt by my actions. I told him that he did not deserve this, that I was so sorry for hurting him, and I broke it off with him that night. He left the next morning. We went no contact for a month. He reached back out to me, saying that he was willing to give me a second chance if I worked on my problems. I am so grateful for him. I really do not deserve him, but I am glad that he is back in my life. I apologize to my partner whenever I get the chance. I reassure him that he was all I ever wanted, compliment him daily, and have told him all my steps to get into recovery. We do not live together anymore. He is still very hurt by my actions and wants to build trust back in me by having separation between us. I gave him access to all my logins and devices, but he declined wanting access to them, and told me he doesn't want to search for something he will never find because it will just make it harder for him. I get that my partner betrayed me as well, in a different sense. He didn't cheat, but he lied to me about stopping something and hid it from me 4 times, and for a while, I paint shopped his devices every day, and it led to anger, and felt like he was hiding something even when there was nothing there. Soon after, I allowed myself to wallow in pity and shame. I allowed myself to be in this hole of shame, and tried to end my life multiple times over a course of 2 months. I began drinking more to try and forget what happened. I had been cheated on in a prior relationship multiple times, and I couldn't believe I hurt someone so badly in the same way. I hated myself. I was so disgusted with myself. I began talking to my best friend and told him what had happened between my partner and I. I told him that I cheated on him, and to my surprise, my best friend was there to support me. He told me that even though it was the wrong thing to do, that it was the right thing to admit to my partner and break it off with him, that it was the right thing to do to not blame my partner and to realize that it was all within myself, and that I made this choice. His ex-girlfriend cheated on him physically multiple times. I began to attend therapy to figure out what the heck is wrong with me. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and began medication. I have struggled with mental illness my whole life, and after a while, I began to deny that there was something wrong with me. I am still in therapy to this day. I picked up the Bible and began reading it to try and find guidance in my life. I began to go outside more, discover new friends, and find happiness within myself. I wrote a lengthy apology to my partner and his family and friends because, even though I hurt my partner, his friends' family trusted me too, and I broke that trust. Yes, my partner still hurts. Yes, I am the reason my partner hurts. I assure him that I will be here for him the entire way, and that I will help him heal from my actions, because that is the least I can do. I am paying for therapy for both him and I. I am paying for couples counseling for the both of us. 5th story. Wife overheard my suspicions of her cheating. Well, I may have done goofed. I've had experience with a dead bedroom, a prior marriage due to her cheating on me, and I'm not entirely sure how to handle the situation I've inadvertently put myself in. I was catching up with a friend of mine and let it slip that I was gonna see my GP and see what was going on. I said that I suspected my wife of cheating because she came up pregnant and terminated, and I was supposed to be sterile. I had inadvertently pocket-dialed her while having that conversation. Below is the transcript of the shitstorm that followed. I don't think you realize how much hearing you say that just destroyed me. Knowing that you don't trust me. Knowing that that's how you talk about me behind my back. Do you want to know how I talked about the situation to the couple of friends I mentioned it to? I talked about how fucking terrified I was, but that I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you, and someday raise a kid with you. Asking for advice on it. I was doing the right thing by terminating because I had no idea if we would ever get another shot, and I just loved you so fucking much that I would put myself through a pregnancy for you. And you don't have any faith or trust me. Took me this long to stop sobbing hard enough that I made myself throw up to be able to type this out. I hope that's enough explaining for you because there is nothing else to say. I'm turning my phone off now. Me. Can you please talk to me instead of just turning it off? You must have not heard the part where I said probably not, but I'm just stressed. Her. The context doesn't change how it feels. You still think it and you still said it to another person. I've been telling you that you didn't do anything wrong. I've been communicating that I just have sexual traumas as well as body issues that just make me go completely I can't do things sexually sometimes. I thought you understood that. Even after telling you that information, you think I would just be going out and fucking somebody else. This just confirms for me that no matter what I do, I will never be enough. I'm just too fucked up to be an effective partner. I've been trying so fucking hard to get past that, and it feels like you don't see it. Would you rather I just forced myself to sleep with you, even if it meant me being in a bad headspace? Who does that help? The only thing that's been giving me a sliver of happiness and hope and solace this entire time has been you, and knowing that no matter what else has gone on in my life, I have someone who loves me and has faith in me and believes in me, and now that's gone, and the weight of everything that has been trying to crush me has nothing holding it back anymore. Me. Verbatim they said, "Nah, that can't be true," and I said, "Yeah, probably not, I'm just stressed." I'm sorry that I've made you feel that way though. And maybe it's a result of my trauma? I'm not sure. I know when the bedroom died in my first marriage, it was mostly due to her cheating on me. I know that I don't think you would do that, but it's hard not to have a back of the mind thing going on. I trust you and I respect you, which is why I wouldn't have brought that up at all. Because I knew it probably wasn't the case and nothing about it would have been constructive. Her. The fact that you can not only think but tell another person that I might be sleeping with somebody else tell me that you either don't believe me when I talk about my traumas and how they have affected me, or that you really just don't understand how seriously fucked up my mental state is. Semicolon. Probably not. Room for doubt. Me. I'd like to respond to the rest of what you said. I'm aware that you have sexual trauma. I don't think I was aware to the extent it went for sure, but I was aware of it, and obviously, I don't want you to force yourself to have sex with me. That wouldn't help anyone. I think that I have a hard time grasping the perspective you have sometimes because I can't imagine going 6 weeks without thinking man sex would be cool. I haven't lived through what you have and I'm not gonna know how it feels, but I try to be understanding and grasp what I can. And yeah, you know, I'm still of the mind that quality of physical intimacy with someone definitely trumps quantity, but when it's non-existent either way, I don't even know how to proceed, you know? You were very reassuring that I didn't do anything wrong, but from my limited understanding of how it feels to be in your body, how could that be? You know, I really don't want you to go down that route of I'm not enough though. That's negative self-talk and not representative of who you are or how others feel about you. I feel like you're good enough. The constant rejection and the feelings it brought up were really reminiscent of experiences I've had in the past, and I'm sorry for letting that turn into any amount of doubt. Sixth story. Heartbroken and confused. All names changed to protect the innocent. Hello all, I apologize in advance for the length of this, but I thought it appropriate to give a little backstory. My wife Jane, 47F, and I, 48M, have been married for a little over 20 years and together for a lot longer than that. We've had a pretty great relationship and I do love her very, very much. We have 2 teenagers, 18 and 16, and have a fairly comfortable life. We both have big roles in our companies, and both take on a lot of stress that has led to a bit of overindulgence when it comes to alcohol and some other things. Things have been fairly solid over the course of our relationship. However, we have had a few rough patches, mainly involving my wife's overdoing at certain situations. My wife loves attention, seems to like attention from other men the most. She finds it harmless as they all know that I'm married. Because of this, I've developed some pretty serious insecurities and trust issues. Our first real issue arose about 10 years back when, on a night out with girlfriends, she had what I believe was her first ever misstep. I was home with a sick child and she decided she was going to stay out and have her fun. I called and texted a few times to see when she was going to come home and never really heard back from her about her plan. She eventually came home drunk and passed out. Somewhere during the middle of the night, I awoke to her texting somebody, and when I questioned her she said she wasn't texting anyone. This was untrue as I watched her type out a message or two and hit send, and then upon being questioned she deleted it. Knowing what I saw, I decided to try to get to the bottom of this mystery of the deleted messages and her suddenly strange behavior. Well, it turns out she met another man at a bar and they really hit it off, I guess. They spent the evening hanging out and from what I gather things got a bit physical. The message I eventually found that she had deleted after she had swore on everything holy to her, that there wasn't a text and made me to feel like I was insane, basically said thanks for such a fun evening, that she really enjoyed it and that it was so out of character of her to take things that far. After finding all of this out she came clean with it was only a kiss and it didn't mean anything, and I've been under so much stress lately and some other nonsense about that me checking in on her was what pushed her to act out. I eventually forgave her, but still carried some unresolved trauma around, because there was really no solid apology. She kept saying it was just once and then some, blaming me for not trusting her that led her to this. Things settled down for the next few years. Then she began to travel for work once or twice a year, and that brought back some issues I have surrounding trust. She assured me everything was on the up and up and that these trips were all work. She eventually invited me on a couple of the trips as her boss said to bring me along. Seeing her in action at these conferences was quite eye-opening. She would hold court at nights in the hotel bar, surrounded by 10-20 drooling gooey. Me wife is quite attractive and very charismatic, all of them drinking to excess. This led me to question her and the aggressive attention some of the men seemed to show to her, some more than others and some who seemed to be slightly obsessed with her. I questioned her about this, how it looks like these guys wanted to get into her pants, and she just laughed it off. They know I'm married, I always come home to you is what her lines would always be. After attending a couple of these conferences with her I lost interest in attending as it wasn't super fun to witness all of this, so I started to stay at home, but was always worried something inappropriate would happen. It was after one of these trips that I caught her chatting with her girlfriend Nancy about one of the men from the conferences, in particular, about how hot he was and that the two of them were always kind of flirting with each other, and that she could totally fuck him if she wanted to. I questioned her on this, and she made me again feel like I was crazy, and that I had invaded her privacy by snooping on their conversation. Funny thing is that this guy in question seemed to be always lurking around her at these work conferences that I attended, and that when I questioned her at the time she thought I was being petty and jealous, and that he was a nobody. That leads me to our latest issue, and one that I'm having the hardest time recovering from. Nancy invited my wife as her +1 on a trip that she won to Florida as her company's top salesperson. I immediately was concerned. My wife has been at peak stress level and had been drinking a bit too much again. She assured me this was going to be just some girl time spent at the beach and pool and was needed to recharge. I had my doubts, but I wanted to be a supportive husband and not a jealous or insecure one, so I reluctantly said to go for it. Off she went for her girls' weekend. We chatted a few times when she was gone via text, just the traditional check-ins and the I love you stuff. It was on the third night she was there that I noticed she had left her Apple Watch by her nightstand, and that in the middle of the night, 2:30 a.m. our time and 5:30 a.m. Est, was a notification from a bank about a weird Venmo charge. I picked up the watch and then looked at the message and then started to look at some of the others. What I saw shattered me. There was a sext string of a very graphic nature between Jane and another guy from 2 nights before. The message started by saying it was me, Jane, from the bar, and that I wish our evening didn't have to end, and how she didn't want him to leave her in the corner of the bar. The sexting included some videos and pictures of her doing some things of a sexual nature, and sending him the videos and pics and them both telling each other how much they wanted to fuck one another, how she wished he would have given her what she really wanted earlier in the evening, etc. Wow. I was destroyed. I must have read this text string 100 times. Then I started taking pictures so I could document all of it. Snapping back to reality, a couple hours had passed and her watch was getting all sorts of messages from others. Turns out she had met some other people and went to an after-hours party followed by an after party. Finally around 7 a.m. PST, 10 a.m. in FL, I had worked myself into a rage and started to FaceTime her. She ignored my calls for about an hour. Nancy did as well. Tracking her phone, it showed she was at some high-rise condo 5 miles away from her hotel. My mind was racing. Had she met this mystery man in person? She then finally FaceTimed me back and to show me she was on the street and was headed back to her hotel. Her and Nancy then concocted some BS story about how they were at a friend's house and fell asleep, and I had woken them up. After hours of lies, she finally started to confess to the events of the trip. Her sexting affair supposedly never got physical. I don't believe that. Some heavy innuendos were exchanged, and they both worked themselves into a frenzy, but again she swears nothing physical. The rest of weekend was spent bar hopping and she never saw the guy again, although she did try to connect him via text. The after party was a mistake and somebody there tried to scam her via Venmo, but nothing of PA type happened. They just stayed up all night partying with a group of randoms. She ended the trip with at least 4 or 5 guys' different phone numbers. How many numbers does a married woman need? Is this normal? Claims it was for her to be able to get into after hours and keep tabs on Nancy in case they got separated as they rode in different cars to these after hours things. So here we are 3 months later and I still feel like shit. I have serious doubts that I've heard the whole truth. I also have serious doubts whether there have been other AAs or PAs while on work trips or elsewhere. Am I crazy to think I haven't heard everything? She wants to but still wants to fight me on some things. Upon her return from Florida, I set some boundaries that I needed to try to make things right. No more Nancy in our life. She's an enabler. Open phone policy. Cutting out certain work acquaintances, and even a couple of other guys that seem to have a thing for her, including one who is constantly asking her out and sending her selfies. Cut back and/or stop drinking. She agreed to all of these, but now seems to be backtracking with the exception of the drinking. She says my boundaries, if I choose to keep them, will only end badly for me. She thinks I need to move on and not dwell on the past. My wife is a stubborn woman, hates being wrong and most definitely hates apologizing. I realize after reading so much on this forum and in doing some research that I've been in a Darvo type of scenario for a long time. Where do I go from here? She's an IC, although not sure what good it's doing. She's mentioned MC and thinks I need IC badly. I just have so many doubts running around in my head, and years of her trickle truthing, lying and antics have me thrown for a loop. I love her and the life we have built together, but I feel like my mental health won't improve unless she makes some serious changes. Apologies for the years of trauma she's caused, or I just start to build a wall and block out the emotions. Thanks for taking the time to read. I hope we can save what we've built, but the ball is in her court and I'm just not sure what her next move will be. 7th story. Worse than I thought? My F30 husband, M34, and I have been together 9 years, married too. We have a 1-year-old. I felt this inkling feeling that something was off about him, as we haven't been intimate for a while. Last time I snooped on his phone was about 7 years ago and never did it again. Thinking that I should just trust him, even though I found that he was into drugs when I snooped. When we started dating, he lied and said he never took drugs. We had an argument, spoke about it, and I just decided to move on. We found differences in our sexual compatibility. Mine is low libido and his is high. I just thought we can work through it, and I know not every couple will have the same sexual compatibility in relationships. Anyway, last month I found out through his Reddit search on his phone that he searched STD oral sex. I woke him up and confronted him. He admitted he has been going to massage parlors for happy endings. The most recent time the lady went down on him and he felt guilty and shamed, where he had pelvic pain. He apparently went to see a psychologist to get help, and psychologist said the intense guilt and shame caused him to have these physical pelvic pain. I was devastated as he visited the massage parlor 3 times after I gave birth to our child, and obviously I didn't have the energy or libido to fulfill him sexually, but I did as much as I can even though I was exhausted. We went to marriage counseling many times after the discovery and I thought we were doing okay. Spoke about his difficult childhood and how that affects him as an adult. Broken family, neglect, rejection, abandonment issues. Just this morning he confessed further that before he met me, he was been frequenting massage parlors. He said he couldn't get into relationships and turns to these services for sexual relief. During the course of our relationship, he hired an escort and attended brothel parlors, and it was not just a simple hand job, but actually had sex twice. This is due to his lack of sexual intimacy with me, and with me rejecting his advances at times. He said in his mind he felt like it was just purely transactional, and he didn't want to be rejected by me when I'm exhausted with baby, and didn't want to disturb me. He said he is remorseful, and he wanted to really come clean this time and be honest with me, that there is nothing else left to hide. He admits he has a problem, and doesn't not want to lose our family over his poor judgment weakness. He's been crying all day. I felt like I was trickle-truthed, as I gave him so many chances to come clean with anything else the first time I discovered his infidelity, so we can see if we can move on from this. Now I feel like I am back to square one and really torn about what to do. I really need help. I feel so sad for myself and our child. I'm so broken. How can I trust again? Is that even possible at this stage? 8th story. Boyfriend cheats with an Uber ride. How I found out. I need thoughts on this crazy ass story. Had this gut feeling my boyfriend was cheating. I'd never pulled up to this house unannounced before, even though I'd had a spare key of his for almost a year. This particular night we had FaceTimed and he was acting so out of character. He normally spent every Friday with me, but on this night, he said he wanted to stay home and work on his music. The giveaway though was that he had his earrings in, which he never usually wears unless he's going out. I even questioned him about it during that FaceTime, and he responded by saying he was taking selfies for his music. He never takes selfies or ones that I know about. Anyways, I try calling him back about 45 minutes after. No answer. Then I call again. TBH, after that first no answer I just knew. My whole body got hot. It was about 1:45 a.m., and in my head I knew I had to go find out myself. Because if I didn't, I knew he would call me crazy in the morning. So I went to go and confirm it myself. My whole body was shaking on the ride over there. I kept trying to convince myself everything was okay and he had just fallen asleep. But my body knew way before my mind did. I was always over at his house and having the gate code was just super normal. So it was easy to pull into the parking lot, and with the key he gave me I opened the front door without knocking. I knew if I knocked he would have time to hide whatever it was he could be doing. I opened the door and noticed the apartment was clean. I'd never seen it that clean, and there was a stack of Uno cards on the kitchen counter and a bottle of Crown gone. He doesn't drink. He shares this apartment with his roommate. For context, without really paying attention to his roommate's door, I noticed his door was closed and there was music coming from his TV. I started shaking, but still hoping for the best, coping. I turn the handle to the door, and in that instant I am living in my worst nightmare. My boyfriend is laying there butt naked, arms around a butt naked girl waist. I'd never experienced the wind getting knocked out of me until that moment. Obviously he jumps up, I scream. Semi-blackout from rage and shock. My grandma had passed away a couple weeks prior and the trauma all came out. I'll save the dramatics for now, but fast forward 30 seconds, it hits me that this girl he was naked with is young. Not like 16-year-old young, but like 17, 20-year-old young. I know that because when I look her in her face, I become fully aware that I am looking at someone close to the girls I coach who are seniors in high school. I'm just so angry at him that I don't even have time to be mad at her. She's screaming I had no idea, and saying how sorry she is because her own mom had passed recently. She said this because I kept screaming and crying about how could he do this knowing my favorite person in the whole world was gone. But here's where the night gets interesting. After about 2 minutes of throwing the girl's Victoria's Secret pink bra at my boyfriend's face, I'm like, where did she go? So I run to the roommate's door and it's locked. And I'm like, well, that's strange. Then it hits me. The roommate is also in there with someone. I become so confused because I'm friends with his girlfriend and I know that his girlfriend is out of town. So now I'm realizing both of them are cheating on us. Again, I'll save the classic dramatics, but I'm writing on here because the excuse my boyfriend used was that the roommate had met the two girls in Uber a couple days before, and the roommate brought the girls over that night. And my boyfriend said he decided to say fuck it and let her sleep over knowing I had a key and that I lived 20 minutes away. He's 30 years old and he can't confirm whether she was 21. Like he says she was, but when I say how do you know, he says because she was a senior in college. This was a horrible event, but like I'm still so freaked out over the age of the girls. But men fuck girls all the time with the age gap. How worried should I be? He also claims that was his first time ever cheating on me in 2 years. What are the chances that I would know when he was cheating if that was true? Am I the biggest clown? He also drives Uber a lot during the week.